Hey, hello everyone, my name is Loryen. Today I want to show you a bit of how I paint stuff. Okay, we're gonna go a little bit more into detail. This is not gonna be some time-lapse kind of thing. So, how do I paint my drawings? Okay, a bit ago I had some people asking me how to make a painting look more realistic, because when they would try to paint it themselves, they had a picture in their mind, and as soon as they would start, they would get really frustrated because it didn't look straight away the way they wanted it to. So I'm gonna give you an insight of how I do it, and then you approach it the way you prefer. So either you can do this by clipping mask or by painting it all in one layer. I honestly prefer to treat it as if it was one layer, although if I do any lightning or some special shadow or some risky move, I prefer to do it in multiple layers. But yeah, I still treated it as if it was one. So the two ways are, one would be filling up, and would be by getting this brush here. It doesn't matter what color, not at the beginning. And you do just like that, and you just color in a whole section. So in this case, I would do the skin, I'd say. It doesn't matter what color, and I'll just do the face this time, just so you guys can get an idea of how to do it. So, like that. It's important that you take your time, clean up the drawing, like that, and then you make a clipping mask on top of it by creating a new layer. Hold Alt and hover your mouse in between the two layers, the new one and the one you just painted, until you get that arrow there. You click, and there you have a clipping mask. So whatever I paint on top of this, it's gonna be within those lines, okay? So I can't go out. And that's great, because right now I can just go here. I usually go to my watches and I just pick something around there, just because that's usually what you find in cartoons and animes. So I can just pick up, well, let's get something more like that. Start by the dark. So in this case she's gonna be white, so I'm gonna go like that and start with some brownish. Can you see there's a little gap there? I can't paint on there just because my mask doesn't cover it, but you can choose any color on that mask layer, color it up. So this is my mask, and this is just a clipping. There you go, clipping mask. Well, it's with the C, but you get the point. So why would I use clipping mask? Well, I can't go out, we already said that, and second, I can do shadows without having to worry about touching the hair or whatever. So I will pick the same color, and then at this point I don't want to just go down because it will become gray. Instead I want to move in that direction, so downwards and to the right, so I mix it with a bit of tone. So I pick up that color again, move down a little and give it a bit of tone. Then I just do the same thing, not worrying about going outside in borders. Right now I'm still using the normal brush because just getting an idea of where the shadows are going to be and how I'm going to paint them, in what tone I'm going to use. Then with the soft brush I'm going to smooth it, so I'm going to take my time, a couple of hours, and I'm going to smooth everything all over the place. So I'm going to show you very quickly how I do it. So changing the size of the brush, I'm going to color where light's being casted. So like in my previous drawing that you might have seen on me posting, she's using her ability, and so light is coming from this side into her face, and so the shadow is gonna be all on the right side. So that would cover her nose as well. But for now I'm just gonna do a kind of a general shadow like you would have on cartoons. And then if I wanted to go into more detail, I can just carry on going darker. But because she's white, I'm just gonna try to keep it to that. Instead I'm gonna go lighter this time. So I'm gonna pick up her skin color, go lighter by going upwards. And then of course you either take or add tone when it comes to light. In this case I'm gonna go take some tone out because the light I imagine would be white. So kind of like that. As you can see, I'm painting very roughly, just moving my brush a little to give myself an idea of where everything's gonna be. I mean, it's gonna hit her eyes as well if it's coming from that direction. It's gonna get the border of her face on this side and the tip of her nose. The nose usually gets, this part of the nose where the bridge is, usually gets light unless you have some weird lightning where the light comes from the bottom. So just gonna do that, and then it's gonna hit the lips, but I'm gonna do that in another tone. I'll show you in a bit. So in fact, let's show you now. I usually grab the shadow layer or her hair color if it's brownish. So I grab that, I paint the lips, and see, okay, so I would say let's go a bit more reddish because that's usually what the lips are, but I'm gonna try to keep that. Can you see the color I'm selecting? I'm gonna try to stay in that same placement. So I'm gonna go red like that, and I get a pink that suits her. So just like that. And then of course I'm gonna add the shadows. I could do it in the same layer because it's not dangerous, it's pretty small and easy to control. But I could create another clipping mask and just clip it to the lips, and then I can't go out, make another clipping mask and add light to that. See, I can erase without touching the things at the bottom. Usually for the lips I like to do sort of a lightning kind of thing where it goes like sort of this shape, but it's more like I do it in strokes so you get that lips texture. So let me delete this and then let's carry on. So I have that. That's how I do it with clipping mask, and I do the same thing for the eyes, for the hair, and then when it comes to the smoothing, what I have to do is zoom in like you've seen me doing in the other video. I try to get a mid-tone between this skin color, normal skin color, and the shadow, and I get something like that. Then I just go to my skin layer, add one more, and then yeah, automatically clips itself. I make my brush small enough to fit in the middle between these two tones. If it's too dark like that, I'll just lower my opacity and it will mix itself like that. I try to keep my brush half into the shadow and half outside the shadow like this, so this way I don't take too much of either of the two. And when it comes to light, I just do the same well, something similar. I usually go towards the yellow, or depending on what light it is, but I just go towards that side, and then I do some highlights. So you can see it in my other painting, in this one here. If I zoom in, whatever, there's just some little dots here and there where I really made some very bright highlights just to emphasize that there's some lightning on her face, but I just want to get those main points where the light really strikes, and then a little softer light around that very bright point. So that's how I do my coloring. If in this case she looks kind of orangey, so I'm gonna mix a little bit of brown into this color. So I'm gonna pick the main color, a little brown, going dark as the shadow goes. So about there, and then on this same layer I will just do this. And if you see it's too light, I'm just gonna go darker. Just do the same thing, but because this is on a clipping mask, I can control a lot of things about it. So for example, I can control the opacity until I can make it work, and just like that I can make something work a little bit better, and I can just keep on going clipping mask, just getting my result out. So that was the first way, and it takes its time. Be careful because it takes a lot of RAM to create a lot of layers, especially when this is quite simple because it's kind of skin, hair, well, the features of her face, and then she's nearly naked. So there isn't that many clipping masks that I can possibly do, but for something like a mech or something, it would take a lot of RAM. So let's go into the second way. So what I like to do, generally speaking, is to fill in all these places, such as the skin, the hair, fill them up quite roughly, just opacity 100, and just fill in all the spots, just like that. But I'm gonna treat this drawing as if it was on paper, so I'm gonna treat it in the traditional way. So just like that, coloring the skin. This is how I did it on my previous video. It's my favorite way, just because it doesn't feel like I'm using a Cintiq. So let's do that. It takes a little bit more time to fix stuff because I'm going over the lines and stuff, but it makes it a lot more real. And it's also faster because I don't have to think of any layers. Am I painting in the right layer or not? Well, technically now I'm totally not. So I'm gonna just cut this, create a new layer, V. You want the color to be in its own specific layer, by the way. Don't paint in the background layer. So just like that. I'm gonna clean it up a little bit, but I'm not gonna worry too much just because I'm gonna add more tones and other colors. So just like that, very quickly, I'm gonna do the 2 arms, and then I'll move on. So okay, I got carried on a little bit and I did the whole body, but I just needed to get a general idea. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna build layer on top of layer and just still treat it like it was a normal painting. So you'll see in a moment. I'll just create a new layer. That was gonna be my skin. And now I'm gonna do one for the shirt. Now I don't have a color palette, but I'm gonna try to guess it the best I can. I'm gonna go with some very saturated blue. Usually saturated colors are pretty easy to mix just because there's white, grays and blacks match any color really. So any color that you saturate should match others. Try to use complementary colors, so if you use blues, make it face oranges, and grays always work with oranges and blues. So I'm gonna do a mix of those. In this case, I'm gonna consider her skin being orange. Never think of the skin as being pink. That's what kids do, and you should learn that skin is never pink. Someone might blush, but nobody's pink. Okay. What you do is just fill in all the spots, just like that. Treat it at this point. You treat it a bit like a digital painting, but the more you think of it as a traditional piece, the easier it will be for you to come up with new colors and stuff. So I'm gonna go back to skin layer, color that bit in. Okay. So I'm gonna do the same thing, a bit like when you do clipping mask, except I'm not gonna do any clipping mask at all. I'm gonna go with her being a redhead. So come on. As you can see, I'm starting with dark colors. So I'm gonna build from the darkest color to the lightest, and it would look something like. As you can see, I'm painting from far. I'm not gonna zoom in. There's no point of me zooming in when I'm not doing any details at all. I'm gonna teach you a little trick to pick up a good shadow that still matches your character. So I'm gonna zoom in now, and I'm gonna do that because usually whenever you paint a black line, you get these pixels that have half opacity, so 50% opacity, and it's cool because it mixes with the color you just applied. So as you can see, I can just zoom in, whoops, and get that brown line, which is basically gray mixed with the and I just painted. And I'll just make a new layer so I don't mess up what I just painted, and paint all the points which should be shadow, kind of like in cartoons. And I do that on a different layer so I can erase without touching my work. Just no need for clip mask right here. And I'm just gonna continue doing that, lips like that. And as far as I could notice, the bottom lip is lighter, so I'm gonna do that as well. So bottom lip is lighter. I'm gonna go up and just gonna do a little highlight there. It's a bit too big for a highlight. So as you can see, pretty simple, but I'll have to go into more detail with this. Eyes, yeah, let's go for that. I prefer them green. Whenever somebody has brown hair, green and brown match very well, so we can do that right now. Once again, starting from the darkest, and I'll build up light. So that dark green acts a bit like a background. The important bit at first is that you cover every single spot, not leaving any white spots, just like that. No empty spots at all. That's what matters. Just like that. Same for the eyebrows. Yeah, that's just filling in colors like you would do on a cartoon. When you want to do her skin color, you don't just pick up white. Nothing's really white because we have blood going through our body and stuff, so it would be, I'll show you how I pick it up. So I pick the skin color, I go upwards, and then a little bit to the left to make it white. So to me the eye color would be the normal skin color, lighter, and then we mix it with white because technically it is white. So I'm gonna make a new layer for that as well, just because it goes behind the iris. And I'm gonna start with darkest, then I'm gonna go even lighter, and I'm gonna do the highlights in white, proper white, but just the highlights because that's where the light hits, and light can be white. I'm gonna add some on top of the eye, just like this. And then I'm going to do the shadows of the eye. So you do based on the shadow, the general shadow, the strong shadow, soft shadow, and then you do the same thing for the light. You do a general light, a soft light, and a very strong light. So let's do that. So we have general green, a soft green. I'm going to go with the shadow of that green, so I'm going to pick up the background, go darker. This time when I'm going darker, it's because of a shadow. Shadows are gray, so I'm gonna go towards the gray, not towards this green here, because that's a very organic green. I want to mix it with shadow, so I'm gonna mix it with gray. I'll add a new layer, just because I don't wanna see. I'll have to erase a little bit, so I'll do the borders like that, and then I erase what I don't want. Usually this kind of shadow would be at the top of the eye, but because my lighting is coming from this side, the shadows would be on the opposite side. So unlike on this case, whereas if the light is coming from this side, the shadow is going to try to hide on the opposite side. So not every shadow is pointing the same direction, since the eye is a sphere. In fact, oops, I'm gonna make you a little bit of an example here on the side. So the eye is a sphere that goes like that. So there's the iris, and then like that, and then there's the eye at the back. So something like that. Whenever light hits, whenever light hits, let's say I don't want to pick too much of a light color, so let's say this hits the eye from below, so from here, and it's directly gonna make it very blue there, and a little blue here, because that's how much it's gonna reach up up there. Imagine this being made of jello. So it's gonna be really strong here. Something like that. And then on the other side it's gonna be weak. So barely be able to like that. And then it's gonna propagate here, but we should reduce the opacity if we're gonna do that. Sort of like this, to be realistic. That's what would happen. But keep it simple and just make it propagate that way. Remember, if it's coming from this side, the shadow would be on the other side. Something like that. Because the shape of the iris, find the right color. Alright, so because the shape of the iris is a bit like this, and then like a disc, so disc at the bottom, and then it comes off like a bulge. The way light goes, it's going like that, going around it. So if light hits here, it's gonna go around, hit the other one. It's gonna, because it's made of, well, have you ever tried to see light through a glass of water? It's very strong on one side, and as the glass is here, you kind of see little stars there being casted as the light hits the water. So you see very little stars on the table, or whatever. Which is the very little, or the light that you see at the bottom of a pool. The same principle happens in the eye as well. So that's how light and shadow work in the eye. And then we have the shadows. What I like to do for the shadows is that go down a little bit of tone and just do that. Then if that's a bit too strong, all I have to do is lower the opacity of my layer until it works. And then just make another, do the same thing. Okay, now there's something in between the two. It works a little bit better. I'm gonna do some under the chin, because usually there's shadow there. Unless, of course, you have a weird lighting setup. That would be up to you. And then remember that the eyes are coming inside into the skull. So if we're thinking 3D, 3D wise, this part, it's actually more outwards than the eye itself. So this is gonna get hit by, there's gonna be a shadow here. You know how a skull has the holes right there? This is what's going on. So you have this, so this is the hole for the eye, and here would be the eyebrows, and then the nose, and whatsoever. So something like that, very roughly. So let me see. Okay, so the eye's doing this. The eyes come, because we're full over skin and eyes and whatever, the eye actually comes off like that. But then there's a small bulge here and one at the bottom. This is usually where we get black bags when we're tired, and then there's one at the top as well, but it's thinner, and it's usually what you see in drawings when the eye goes like this. And then you see a light at the top, a line at the top of the eye in anime as well, and that's just this bulge here. Not bulge, kind of like a curve that goes into the eye, and then that goes in, then out, and then the eyebrow, and same out, same at the bottom. So it goes in, out, and then the eyebrow, which is the cheekbone. So it goes inwards, then outwards, and you get the cheekbone. So this one was a little bit wrong, just like that. So I'm gonna consider that here as well. I know this is, if I did any lighting, it would go something like this. would hit this side, and then there would be a shadow underneath, which would be the skin right here. Try to not do a very specific shadow, try to spread it so it mixes into the rest. So now I turn my hyper sensibility off, I usually do. But as you go farther from the actual point where the shadow is, lower the opacity of your shadow so it blends into the rest of the illustration. But also try to make it so a shadow meets another shadow like this. So the one of her eye meets the one of her forehead, the one of her forehead meets the one of her chin. Then we have the nose, which meets the one of the eye. And then from the side of her nose, we go to the bottom of her nose. From the bottom of her nose, we get the one at the top of her lips. And then we use the lips as a bridge, and then there is a shadow below the bridge, below the lips, because the lips come out of the face. So there should be a shadow underneath it, very thin shadow, because you don't want to emphasize that too much, because otherwise it would look like hair. So kind of like that, and then of course the hair casting a shadow of its own, just like that. So you get a fair idea of how I do it and how I think of my lighting. So when it comes to lighting, I move towards the white in this direction, and when it comes to shadow, I just do the opposite. I move to this side, unless, well, this would be darker and this would be shadowy. So I go downwards when I want it to be shadowy. I go to the downwards and to the right when I want it to be darker. So her hair has to be darker, like that. Now here's shadowy, so I'm gonna mix it with a little gray, and I keep building on top of that until I'm happy with the result. So that's it for now. I hope this has been helpful, and I'll do one more, which is going to be about lighting, how to, some techniques that you can use to create the illusion of there being light. But that's it for now. I wish you good luck on your own things. So, until then, see you guys.